Welcome to the Nuggets Inc. podcast, presented by no one. I'm your host, Matt Schubert, joined once again by Bennett Durando. We get into a bunch. The season is over. The Nuggets have been eliminated. A 7-game classic with the Oklahoma City Thunder. We get into what went wrong, what went right, what's next. What can the Nuggets do to get back to the top? All that and more coming up next. And we are back at the Denver Post Podcast Studios. It smells terrific outside. Weather's nice. And we're all in the same room for the first time in, I don't know, like a month?
It's been a little while. Yeah.
The Nuggets are gone.
Good to see you in your Supersonics hoodie.
Thank you. Yeah. It's good to see you too.
Nuggets are done. So
yeah, Nuggets are eliminated. Went 7 games with what appears to be the favorites to win the championship at this point. We still don't know who the head coach is. It's Wednesday morning, 8:30 in the morning. So quite possible that that's changed between now and when you're listening to this. David Adelman put his best foot forward, I'd say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, when he inherited an unusual situation, they were looking at a play-in.
They were teetering
outcome.
Yeah.
Won the last 3 of the regular season to get back to the 4 seed, get home court in the first round, which I would argue was very important in the end, against a Clippers team that was playing a deeper rotation than them. You beat that.
They weren't by the end of that series. They weren't trusting a lot of guys by the end of that series.
They were playing 8 still, I think.
How many were they trusting?
Well, maybe just 7. Dunn kind of got played out. But
Dunn was no longer a factor.
Yeah. You beat the hottest team in the NBA that went 18-3 its last 21.
They are the Clippers.
Okay. And then you take the Thunder to 7 games. You give them some issues with your zone. The players played really hard for him. Multiple of them basically endorsed him getting the job after Game 7. They obviously haven't hired him at this point, but I can tell you that the Cronkies were very impressed by the job he did under the circumstances, and that when he took over in the first place, part of the rationale with the timing was that this could be an audition for him. So if that is the sort of baseline going into it, that this is that sort of opportunity, then I don't know what else you could have really asked him to do other than win Game 7, which clearly was going to be really tough. He did make a mistake in Game 7. I'll say this.
You're talking about the substitution pattern at the end of the first quarter?
It's the beginning of the second quarter, really, because
it bridged both quarters.
I'm not going to blame him for making substitutions at the end of the first quarter, because you do have to make substitutions eventually in a game, and unfortunately for him, there just wasn't really a solution.
But Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray were both off the floor.
Yeah, so that's the start of the second. They both sit. OKC kind of goes a little different and has both Shea and Jalen Williams out there. Yeah. They make a very quick 8-0 run, something like that. He has to rush Murray back into the game. And, from there was a snowball effect sort of through the end of the first half and then through the end of the season. That's really not why they lost that 2-minute stretch, but it was a mistake, I think.
It definitely it took the momentum that the Thunder had built over the end of the first quarter and gave it a little rocket booster.
Yeah, for sure. Nonetheless, thought he did a pretty extraordinary job. Pretty good chance that OKC isn't going to play another Game 6 the rest of the way. So,
you're already out on the Timberwolves.
I don't want to be. I believe in their roster. I believe in Ant. But he just, there's still a level that he kind of needs to grow to from a decision-making standpoint. They do a lot of silly stuff with the ball sometimes. OKC kind of thrives on that. Like, we saw them, I think, have 16 steals or something in that Game 7 against Denver. Like, they will take your lunch money if you're not smart with the ball and decisive and intentional with the ball, and they'll run away with games. And it kind of started to happen in Game 1. I'll give the Wolves this. They missed a lot of high-quality threes with their role players. So, you know.
I'm not throwing in a towel on that series yet.
I don't want to throw in the towel, but I think there's a world where OKC wins this in 5 and then wins against New York or Indiana in 5.
Wow,
too.
just throwing Indiana under the bus. It looked pretty good to me.
I hope so. I mean, the Pacers have been a blast to watch.
I enjoy the Pacers thoroughly. I also enjoy a good Madison Square Garden crowd. I enjoy that being back into...
Yeah, now that it's not on the table for me to cover.
To be at MSG?
Yeah, in the finals, I don't really care. I'd rather see the Pacers win. By the way, just like Knicks fans, the whole, like, it's finally our time. We're so tortured, and we, you know, like, woe is us. We're the most...
You're not buying it?
You know, tortured fan base left in the field. Only one of the 4 remaining teams has won an NBA championship.
Correct.
Just gonna leave that there.
That is correct, and also, I mean, they also haven't won a championship.
I understand.
Just stop that. All right, we're not calling the Sonics championship a Thunder championship.
No, I agree. Yeah. No, I'm saying the Knicks.
Oh yes, the Knicks. Yes,
I know it was 50 years ago, but they have won an NBA championship. Oklahoma City doesn't have one. Minnesota doesn't have one. Indiana doesn't have one.
Correct.
Those 3 cities have something in similar, different from New York, by the way. But, you know, we're just not going to be hearing as much about how those fan bases have wanted a title and have been waiting for a title.
OKC's fan base will never get sympathy from me, and I think you can see the reason why. I'm wearing it right now.
Very fair. Nonetheless, I think there's a chance that no one takes the Thunder as far as Denver did. So
yeah, I think there's definitely a chance. I also think there's a chance that they don't even win the championship. To be honest,
possible. Yeah,
I think there were parts where they looked pretty creaky against the Nuggets, and that was a Nuggets team that was duct taped together, super glued, just not a full Nuggets squad. And granted, they did have Nikola Jokic, so that was probably a big part of it. But I don't know. There were parts where they looked really shaky.
I think it's OKC against the field right now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, they're the favorites.
Like, I would put their championship chances above 50%, and the other 3 teams combined below 50% is what I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough.
That's kind of where
I think that's. I would go with that. I think the betting lines probably match up with that.
Yeah.
Let me just one little quick aside. We talked about Game 7. One of the big Game 7 adjustments, and the thing that everybody was talking about after the game, was Mark Daignault's decision to go small and to put Alex Caruso essentially as a fronting defender on Nikola Jokic. And I saw in weird corners of Twitter and social media people using that as a way to basically take shots at Nikola Jokic. Shaq would have never done this, they say. Never would have been able to put Alex Caruso on Shaq. He would have powered over him and dunked on his head. It was 2 guys that were covering him at all times, if not 3.
Yeah, no.
And on top of that, let me finish my point here.
There's pretty much 5 guys in the paint or like stunting over to him or like doing any variety.
And because the NBA officials officiate games the way that they do, Alex Caruso could have suplexed Nikola Jokic, and no fouls would have been called, because that's what happens when you've got a big guy going up against a little guy. The little guy just gets the benefit of the doubt every time, and you could say that this is the cynical Oklahoma City strategy, is we're just going to hack the heck out of somebody with a small guy, and they're not going to call it, and we're going to force them to call it, and they kind of defend that way. To a certain degree, where they're extremely handsy, they're hitting arms, they're doing all sorts of stuff, and you either call it and a bunch of guys get in foul trouble, or they get a lot of steals.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's...
It's sort of like Bill Belichick with how they used to have their cornerbacks hold on to guys because it was...
Well, you can't call it every time.
Right, exactly. You can't call it every time.
There is a smart logic in that.
Yes.
And if you establish a precedent of that level of physicality, eventually you are going to get easy buckets out of it.
Right.
To, at minimum, offset the free throws that you end up giving up.
And
And this is why OKC ends up, in the minus on free throw attempts in so many of its games.
Right. And it felt like the Caruso thing was them leveraging that to the highest degree. And they didn't break that out until Game 7.
Yeah. And so, look, it's a testament to Caruso being just a maniac of a defender and just like truly one of the best at his specific job in the league.
Why did the Lakers let that guy go?
Testament to Sam Presti's crazy offseason. Getting Caruso for Josh Giddey, who basically got benched in the playoffs last year.
With no draft picks sent the other way.
Going out and getting Hartenstein, which gives them this optionality, and that's the other thing it's a testament to, is the adaptability of Oklahoma City's rotation, and ultimately this is the difference in the series.
Yeah.
It's not just that their seventh guy is better than Denver's seventh guy, and that most certainly is true.
It's definitely true.
But it is the fact, like, depth can win you a playoff series. That is what we are learning right now, and the reason is that they can do so many different things. They can go small, they can go double big, they can switch a bunch, they can do what they're doing with Caruso on Jokic and send guys in behind. Their guys rotate back out to the perimeter super well so that even the quote-unquote open shots have pretty decent contests on them. Like, they are able to do so much different stuff tactically with their lineups that Denver just was not able to do because of how limited they were. They were a one-trick pony with the starting lineup, basically. Denver's starting lineup, 10.3 net rating in the series, and it did not matter.
No. Well, and a great example of this is the second Jalen Williams didn't play until garbage time of Game 7, excuse me. And
yeah, great point. I mean, he was really effective all series.
And he had been a great option for them off the bench in all these other games. But then they just switched up their entire philosophy for a game, and that's what you're dealing with. Is we're going to be this team now. Mm-hmm. We're going to be this team now, and they just have that malleability that is. I mean, I think at this point every NBA team is going to be chasing that now after seeing that, and it's not like this is a new lesson. The Spurs used to be that way. There's many other teams that used to be that way. There was just also star-laden teams that could weather that to some degree. The Miami Heat, the Golden State Warriors when they had the most ridiculous lineup in the history of the NBA.
Right.
It's hard to build that team now.
Yeah, and hard to keep that team more so.
Right.
Yeah, the Thunder won Game 7, like, I wrote this, basically the way they won 68. Like, the defense, the depth, the malleability, like you said. By the way, to your point about second Jalen Williams, suddenly they go with Kenrich Williams in Game 1 against the Timberwolves.
I know, I saw that.
And he gives them effective minutes.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he did not play a rotation minute against the Nuggets in a 7-game series. It's a ridiculous roster. And they just are able to keep pulling out all of these different cards and doing different things, and it's incredible. And obviously they were able to rotate these fresh legs onto Murray and Jokic throughout the series, and Murray didn't play well in Game 7, but to an extent, it's a product of what Oklahoma City is. This is what they make good offenses look bad. That's kind of what this was, and so they win with their depth, they win with their defense, they win by getting out on a few fast breaks, and suddenly it's an avalanche of a 20-2 run. And Denver, lost the way that it regressed in the regular season this year by the same token.
If you're going up against OKC, are you like kind of forced to flop to try to get the foul calls that are there? Like, is that like a
You're
strategy?
baiting me. Jokic flopped in this series.
He did. He did. I think at sometimes to prove a point.
Yeah. So, look, I've covered the team for 2 years and change. Jokic as a whole flopped this year more than he did last year, I think. Like even before the Thunder series, I think that he foul baited a bit more. I don't think he prefers to do that. I think that he responds to the scenario. And this was a team that leaned on him more than it ever had all season. It's evident in the numbers, right? And part of that is sometimes to slow this game down and to counteract the attention that I am getting because the rest of this roster isn't good enough. I just need to get to the line, get myself a breather, get points that way if I can. And when he tries to play through it, he usually doesn't get rewarded. When he flops, he does sometimes get rewarded. And so when that is the precedent that is set by the whistle, he starts doing it more. And it's why Shea does it. It's why anyone does it, right?
Terrible.
So
they got to figure that out. They really do.
They always say that they're going to, and then they don't.
Yeah, I think it's been a problem now for a decade or two. Gotten worse as the European soccer sort of influence has seeped more and more into the league.
Yeah. So yeah. I think he did foul bait a good bit in this series. Necessity. I don't know. Fans can argue that. I also don't think that the whistle was why Denver lost the series.
No, not at all. Not and just to be clear, it's not like Alex Caruso clutching and grabbing Nikola Jokic wasn't the reason they lost Game 7. They just didn't have enough guys to take the attention away from Nikola Jokic that would have opened up the game for him. That was essentially the problem. Jamal Murray, he didn't show up. He had a bad game.
Yep.
He gets paid a lot of money to be the guy in that game, and he wasn't. Michael Porter Jr. had one arm, and he just couldn't play through it enough to be consistently effective. We haven't talked about it yet, but my hat's off to Aaron Gordon for getting on the court and getting 11 rebounds. Jamal Murray had one, by the way. One rebound in that game. Aaron Gordon had 11 and was still able to go out there, but obviously not the guy. And Christian Braun was jacking him up and trying, but they just didn't have the weapons.
Christian Braun was a huge part of why they got up 11.
Yes. Yeah, he started out great. He fizzled after that.
And eventually everyone played poorly. That's just kind of how the game went. But
right.
He was pretty solid, as solid as he could have been in a 30-point Game 7 loss, right? But he was, with that in mind, he was solid in all three of their elimination games.
Yeah.
During this playoff run. Big game player.
Yeah.
He is due for his second contract this summer.
What does that turn into? Because they're running up against it with the cap.
Do we want to turn the page of that? Is there any other Game 7
Well,
stuff?
I do want to get into Aaron Gordon.
Okay.
I do want to talk about Aaron Gordon. Did you get a sense? You could watch. Obviously, he did not sprint. And there was a couple, I don't know if you call it explosive, but where you would jump and grab a rebound, and compete for loose balls and stuff like that. But very clearly, he could not be explosive. Would he have played at all in the playoffs after that, had they advanced?
So he said after the game that his
grade 2 strain, by the way.
Grade 2 left hamstring strain. That his mindset on this was play Game 7, just help the team get through the round if possible. And then, in his words, he's probably missing the first 2 or 3 games of the next round at least.
Feels like more than that.
I think that he is missing the next 7 games of the next round and then the first 7 games of the round after that. That's what I think.
Right.
It's a month of recovery, maybe more. So
I don't think that people understand that a strained hamstring means it's partially torn. It's
grade
not,
2 is insane to play through. Like
Yeah.
it was almost a safety hazard. And and look, he said himself that he was confused by the MRI, and he did not feel like the results of the MRI matched what he was feeling. So maybe there was something a little off. Maybe there was like a slight misdiagnosis and it was more of a grade 1. Like that's speculative. Who knows? But he obviously felt more confident than what test results were telling him to feel.
But it's not like he was moving great.
Of course not. I mean, you don't move great on a grade 1 hamstring strain either. Steph Curry missed the last 3 games of the Warriors-Timberwolves series with a grade 1 strain.
Yeah,
so
again, it's a partial tear of your hamstring.
Yeah. So, like, certifiably insane that he went out there and played and, cemented himself just as like an all-time Nugget, I guess.
Was he their third best player in that game?
He might have been behind like Jokic and Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, in fairness, not saying much because again, no one really,
right.
But yeah, I mean, he hit a pull-up 3, had an and one on that nice kind of over-the-top entry from Jokic. He's getting rebounds. He had a few other sort of tip-out rebounds that ultimately I don't think were credited to him, but like there was one play where he drove and then it's like he kind of forgot what his hamstring situation was for a split second and he started to go up like he wanted to dunk on a guy or at least try and adjust at the rim for a tough layup or something and then kind of came down, and that's when I mean, like, Thunder fans had to be like holding their breath like, oh my gosh, this is an insane thing to be watching right now. But yeah, I mean, it's incredibly selfless, maybe to a alarming,
almost too
hazardous
selfless.
extent. I think, he should probably be fortunate that it didn't end up getting a ton worse. Yeah, unbelievable playoff run for him. So I just,
Hey, Ron, you were in the building. You were down low. What was your sense of how he was moving in Game 7?
I was in the building. I was not down low. I was up high. He seemed fine.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, he was leaping.
Aaron sends his
jumping.
thanks to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Did they never let you get down on the court?
Pre-game, post-game, during the game, there was no room to rotate in. Here in Denver, we rotate people in, but
Well done, OKC. Well done. It's what do you say? I mean, it's a 2-bit town, so that's what you get.
Yeah.
they have some casinos and other stuff.
They've got like one building, like one tall building in their downtown skyline.
They somehow heisted an NBA team. Hats off. Way to go.
Yep. And one that's probably going to win a championship. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So look, I don't know. Denver fans probably can't be too upset by like the result under the circumstances. Watching Game 7, like pretty clear who the better team was. The stuff to be upset about is more of the zoom out, larger existential stuff. As far as Aaron Gordon goes, it's just like an all-time playoff run. Christian Brown said something that kind of got lost in the shuffle after the game, and I think it's worth pointing out because I agree with it completely. He brought up, and he was disappointed that they lost. They feel like they can win a championship, all of this stuff, right? But he kind of was like, we had some pretty cool moments during this run, and I think we're all going to remember those fondly, and we're proud of what we did as a team and like happy to have some of these cool wins and cool moments throughout this. And I think that we overlook that sometimes with teams
You think?
that don't go all the way. Like I The only really
this is the Giannis at the lectern talking about failure.
I know. No, I'm not. I just like. Oh, don't worry. We're gonna get into like this team has lost in the second round 2 years since winning a championship and all that. But
I agree with what your point is.
Like the only experience I can really point to as a fan is my St. Louis Cardinals fandom. And after they won the title in 2011, they went to the NLCS for another 3 straight years, but never won another championship. Went to one other NLCS in 2019. That's
without Albert Pujols for the first 3.
You know, they've had some like crushing ways to end their season during this time. But like in 2012, they came back from down 6-0 in an NLDS Game 5 to win the series. And it was like an awesome game, and I will remember it forever. And then they ended up choking in the NLCS. But I still will remember that NLDS as fondly as like almost any other sports memory from that decade. They had like some really exciting wins during this run and were generally very fun teams and did not end up getting back to another championship after 2011. And I generally look back on those years as a positive. Now, we're going to hold the Nuggets accountable, and they like their goal needs to be to win a second championship with Jokic because Jokic had an outrageous, like unthinkable season, right?
Well, and also the Cardinals won 2 championships with Albert Pujols.
Yeah, of course, going back to 2006, no doubt. But the Aaron Gordon shot at the end of Game 1, the comeback in Game 1 of this series, the dunk to beat the Clippers,
incredible.
Running the Clippers out of the gym in Game 7, some of the little moments, like even the Game 3 overtime win against the Thunder, another Gordon shot, the game-tying 3 at the end. Like, I hope the Nuggets fans like have warm memories of those moments in the years to come, because like it can, and like even last year, the Jamal Murray game winners against the Lakers, right? Like that is part of this era. This is sort of a cardiac Nuggets team the last 2 seasons.
Right.
And ultimately you want to make a conference finals at least during these 2 seasons. But like there are moments that are going to be remembered decades from now as like franchise great moments.
Well, it also, to be clear, the Nuggets haven't had this sort of postseason success in their history. Ever.
Yeah.
They've never done this. George Karl was here for a decade. They won 2 series in that entire time. The Nuggets win at least 1 series every year with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. At least 1.
Yeah.
They've been to multiple conference finals. They won a championship, and they're not done. And I agree with your sentiment for the most part that, you know, yes, this season didn't end in a championship, and there was some really rocky times. They fired their coach with 3 games left. They fired their general manager with 3 games left. There was some, I would say, I don't know if you call them ugly, but at least discomforting reports about all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. But, I mean, Aaron Gordon gave you some fantastic memories. So did Nikola Jokic. So did the whole team, for that matter. And, yeah, you don't win a championship, but there's only 1 in 30 that wins a championship. It's hard to do.
Real quick, just off the top of our heads, top 5, because it's a memorable season,
yes,
for better or worse. Top 5 most memorable moments. Number 1 is Malone and Booth getting fired in the last week of the regular season.
Easily. But I would almost fuse that together with the Timberwolves loss.
Well, so I was going to say maybe the buzzer beater dunk at 2, and then I was going to say the Timberwolves loss at 3. And you could even argue the Timberwolves loss should be 2. The 60-point triple-double.
Yeah.
The Russell Westbrook missed layup and foul at the buzzer.
Yeah.
Like an all-time loss in Nuggets history.
Aaron, you have something to say?
Mike Singer getting hired. That's in contention for number 1.
Yeah.
Intelligence.
Our guy.
The team needed the intelligence.
And strategy. They needed both.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We forget strategy.
Great point. But yeah, like the Minnesota game, I think you can separate that from the firings, but
it kind of like it almost
melts
it
propelled it. but those two, the two Aaron Gordon game winners, and then I guess last maybe like
It's the Suns game, isn't it?
Jokic 30-20-20, yeah, where you have Brown's near game winner, Durant's buzzer beater, overtime, yeah.
That's got to be it, right?
That's the fifth most memorable moment.
Well, I would say it's in the running at the very least. I mean,
No, I think it is. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think it's for that to be the fifth most memorable moment of the season is pretty crazy. I'll never forget that night. Like coaches like having Jokic sign their box score in the locker room and stuff. Like it was a very cool like man, you just kind of felt the history of the stat line, and everyone was kind of allowing themselves to nerd out about basketball stats for a moment.
Yeah. It was an incredible game.
Yeah. So
on top of that,
it's just an amazing thriller, and they had so many games this year that were like just wild endings that won't even be that remembered just comparatively to some of the other ones. Like they had a game in Sacramento with 7 lead changes in the last minute and 14 seconds.
That's a classic Kings game.
And I think
that's how Kings games go.
Murray hits a game winner with, I think, 8 seconds left, and then DeRozan drops the pass on the baseline before the buzzer. But that was an incredible game. Like their first win of the season, they were down 10 with 2.5 minutes left, I think. And Murray has a beautiful reverse layup with half a second left in Toronto to force overtime.
Yep.
They were it was a wild, bonkers season, and this team seemed to only know how to play these ridiculous games. And then, it's almost appropriate for something as crazy as the firings to happen when they did, in the scope of just how dramatically up and down the year was. But I don't know. Just
can I just want to do real quick on Jamal Murray.
Sure.
We kind of now have 2 playoff runs where he's been at best good.
Yeah.
He had one game in the OKC series where he was really good, which was game 3.
I'm going to push back a little. Like, he was bad in game 7. He came into game 7 averaging 22, 5, and 5 against the best defense that he's ever faced. And one of the best defenses that anyone in the NBA has ever faced.
Yeah, shooting like 40% from the field.
I understand, but like he kept shooting. Like he was trying to play aggressively.
They need him to be better.
I also think that he was really good in game 6 when they needed him to be, with the illness, by the way.
Yeah, he had a really good first half.
Yeah, like 2 of their 3 wins in the series were like he was pretty instrumental. He was inconsistent. I also think Jokic was inconsistent, and he gets paid more than Murray. So like,
not at the level that Murray was inconsistent.
I know.
Like Murray's bad games were loud bad.
Sure.
His extension hasn't even started yet, and he's going to be making what, 45? What is it? 50? Where's he at for annual on this?
Annual is 52, but I want to say it starts under 50 at like 46 or 48 or something, and then ascends throughout the course
If this
of the
team is going to win championships, he has to play like a superstar.
Yeah,
and he has to do it often. Like, I'm sorry, that's what his job is, and he hasn't done that for 2 straight playoffs.
I think he deserves some slack on the Thunder series. I really do. I think that he outplayed the Thunder's second options and third options and all of this for the duration of the series until Game 7, basically.
Well, are we saying second and third options and just these individual players?
Like Jalen Williams.
But like, that's fine, but he has to be better than that. Like, that's not the bar for him.
Okay, I understand. But so what that gets at is, like, the real problem with the Nuggets is their depth. And
in part because they're paying him so much money.
Their depth is such that perfection is needed from Jokic, from Murray, from that starting lineup. And it is not enough for Murray to just be very, very good. And over his regular season average, which was a career high in scoring, he scored more than that in this series. against the Thunder defense. I think that
playing
needs
more
to be
minutes.
stressed.
Playing more minutes.
Sure, like he had.
I wouldn't say he was very good in this series.
His on-off impact was far greater than Jokic's, 3 times more so. Like,
isn't that more about their depth though? Because Russell Westbrook's coming in and he was terrible in this series.
I mean, that's to an extent. But Murray, like, they did not have organization when Murray was not on the floor. He was extremely impactful in this series. I do think that, like, the Thunder and the Thunder's depth makes good players look bad at times and makes good players look inefficient at times. And you can say, okay, well, the best offensive players need to just be able to outplay the best defenses then. Fair enough. It's really difficult when the defense, on top of being elite, is able to focus the vast majority of its attention on 2 players because they didn't have to worry about anyone else.
That's
really.
an excellent point.
But
isn't it like he kind of has to transcend that?
I think I think if that's like the bottom line that you want to land on, that's pretty fair. But the Nuggets did not make it easy for him to transcend that, and they've put him and Jokic in a position here where there was almost an unfair burden of proof on them to show that this was the better team. And it, like, you know, it's just tough. Like, the release valves are Russell Westbrook a lot of the times, like, because he's the guy who's not getting guarded.
Good God, was he bad in this? The second half of the series, he was a disaster every time he was on the court.
Yeah,
he was a series late in my prediction,
Yeah.
which was that he was going to blow up a series. He finally did. He was really bad. So I guess this can segue into what we're talking about here is essentially that there's a fatal flaw to the construction of this team, and that is they have so many high-dollar guys, and the number of high-dollar guys that they have has in connection to their inability to, like, really hit in the draft outside of Christian Brown, led to this depth problem, this malleability problem that the Thunder have the malleability, the Nuggets don't, and they also don't have a lot of future avenues to change their team. I mean, essentially, you know, you're not trading Jokic. That's never happening. I'm starting to think you're never trading Aaron Gordon either. He's now beloved. But he's also the guy that would give them the best return of the 3 guys that they could trade and get something back. The only way that they can really improve their team is hit big on a mid-level exception guy, find a way to draft a guy and hit big on a draft guy.
By the way, they're the only team in the league that doesn't have a pick.
Yes, they have 0 picks in this draft. Hope that Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, one of these other young players,
Jalen
Pickett takes a leap over the summertime, or they trade one of Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., or Aaron Gordon. That is the situation that they're in right now. So, with all that preamble, I say to you, what can they do? What do you think is actually plausible, and what is the path forward that's going to make them a championship contender again? Well, I say a championship team. They are a contender.
I think they need change, and change is a very uncomfortable sort of premise for them right now, because when the starting lineup, even as hobbled as it was, just showed that it is good enough to beat the starting lineup of the best team in the NBA. You don't want to get rid of that. You don't want to break that up. You don't want to break up the continuity. But when depth is so clearly the difference between these 2 teams, and the 3 highest, metrics players net rating wise in the series are Cason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, and Alex Caruso coming off the Thunder's bench, you have to get deeper. Your mechanisms to do so, those exceptions and stuff, are really narrow on the margins. Like, it's just tough. Like, Dario Saric was a disaster of a signing, but it's really tough.
Well,
to
you can
get
find
someone
signings like that with a lot of teams where they don't hit on that guy.
Yes. And so like you're left with this trade situation, and those trades aren't easy. I kind of want to talk through how they got here, because I think that can allow us to help kind of
Okay, we're going backwards.
understand with where they are.
Well, okay, go for it.
Because there's so much here, and the blame game is part of this, and I think the easy thing to say is, well, Calvin Booth screwed up this whole thing, and they are in a predicament of his creation.
I think Tim Connelly had a hand in it.
I think a lot of things had a hand in it.
Michael Malone had a hand in it.
Yeah, well,
His playing rotations.
So, like, with Booth, right, he comes in, his final touches on the championship roster, the KCP trade, starter on a good contract.
Fantastic trade.
They signed Bruce Brown for cheap.
Fantastic
Sixth
signing.
player on a good contract.
Maybe shouldn't have given that player option, but at the same time, that's probably how they got the deal done.
They draft Christian Brown, 21st
Well done.
overall. 3 championship team rotation players right there. Okay. Now the team starts to erode over the years. You lose Bruce Brown.
There's
CBA.
no way they could have.
They couldn't have brought him back. That's a CBA casualty. And by the way, Bruce Brown has been injured a bunch the last 2 years and nowhere near effective as he was for that year in Denver.
Well, he's not playing next to Nikola Jokic.
I'm just saying. So they lose Jeff Green, who was not a rotation player in Houston this, down the stretch when it was, nut crunching time. So, so like you can quibble with the losses, and then they let KCP walk. Now he is on what is perceived as a bad contract while Christian Brown thrives. I'm open to the argument that they still needed just one KCP type player on this team, even on a bad contract. I'm open to that, but considering how restricted the team is, like, do you want to have him at $22 million for another 2 years?
Well,
after
you'd be further hamstrung, I feel like,
exactly
with what you could do.
So you have all that.
Here's
your contracts now.
One thing you did not mention,
Uh-huh.
which I think is it's an underrated thing. You haven't brought up Najee yet.
That's I'm getting to that. I
and
wanted
hold
to
on,
start with just sort of the
and then the other one, trading away. Why can't I think of his name? Reggie.
Yes, Reggie Jackson.
Sending draft picks
yes.
along with it.
Yes. I kind of wanted to start with just the very bare bones, the build up, and then the steady erosion of that championship rotation. Because the loss of those guys who were in that rotation, I don't know that any of them were bad decisions, really. They were all justifiable decisions, at least. So, your contracts right now. They signed MPJ to his max contract under the old CBA and under different front office leadership.
Yeah, that's Conley.
So you can say that's Tim Connelly's fault, and part of the blame pie goes to him. But at the same time, even then, it's not entirely Tim Connelly's fault when really nobody understood what was coming with the second apron with this CBA structure.
I would say the one fault you can find with it is that teams seem to have, and at the end of the last CBA in particular, and even early on now, defaulted to just give them the max money rather than negotiate with the player.
Yeah.
And find a number that makes the most sense. And I think, Connelly, it used to be, well, we want to keep our players happy. Mm-hmm. We want people to know that this is how we treat our players. Well, when you do that, it also has other impacts.
Agreed. So also, like, you want to see a payoff there with, like, high caliber free agents, like, wanting to come to your team, that sort of thing.
Right.
Like, and like, I don't know if we can say that Denver has seen that payoff necessarily. So
they did get Bruce Brown on a nice deal.
Yeah, I guess so. So Tim Connelly ownership, they had a ton of faith in Michael Porter Jr. They gave him that contract. You can argue that is the defining issue with this team's cap sheet right now. And it looms large because he's going to be difficult to trade right now. They signed Zeke Najee. This is Calvin Booth.
Which when it happened felt like a bad idea. Like in real time. It wasn't even like, oh, that's reasonable. No, it felt bad when it happened. 4
years by $8 million per year. So
for a guy who had yet to break the rotation.
Yeah. So, I'm of two minds on this. I think Calvin Booth kind of just has to wear that one, but also I think it's fair to ask, is there a world where Najee is a solid, switchable backup power forward who is worth $8 million a year, which ultimately isn't that much money, by the way. Like, it's $8 million is not much.
No, it's not.
So, is there a world where he could be that? I think there maybe is, but Zeke Najee is a tragedy of errors, really, from the Booth Malone situation.
Correct.
And
even though he was not a Booth draft pick.
Even though he was not a Booth draft pick.
It's a Conley draft pick.
Yeah, Booth is obviously in the front office, was involved, but he was not the top decision maker in the front office at that point. So the Zeke Najee thing, he is a player who's, I think that his confidence fluctuates a little bit, like if he goes into a slump. And I don't think his confidence was helped by the fact that there was this Cold War going on with Booth and Malone, and Booth ultimately to sign him is kind of part of a series of moves that I think is a little bit of an act of hubris, honestly, from him. And Malone, on the other end of that, responds to the way that Booth was building this team with a certain level of pettiness in terms of who he liked, who his guys were,
Gillespie,
who he wanted to give a chance to. And Zeke Najee, like Calvin Booth encourages Zeke Najee to go work out in Los Angeles with Mike Penberthy, a shooting coach hired by Calvin Booth that Malone did not approve of. Zeke Najee goes there. Malone doesn't like that. Same with Jalen Pickett, by the way. Malone, that's just another knock against Najee as far as Malone, and Najee represents Booth in a certain way to Malone. Malone does not play Najee much. He's not a rotation guy. The leash is pretty short on him. He plays a lot of center instead of power forward. I think it's fair to say, based on a lot of the analytics, that Najee makes way more sense at power forward than center.
This is very clear he's not a center.
And you just kind of see a steady breakdown of his confidence almost over the course of this time. And so I feel bad for Zeke Najee. And I think there is a world where he could have been not necessarily like a really good role player, but effective enough to justify $8 million a year.
Post Malone All-Star.
I mean, who knows?
It could be. You could throw him in that.
So I really think that you can say that the contract that Booth gave him was just bad in a vacuum if you want, but I also think the greater issue with the Zeke Najee decision was the culture, basically, that was going on and that had sort of festered between Booth and Malone, and Zeke is maybe example number one of how that had a tangible impact on this team's ability to build and win and succeed. They signed Reggie Jackson to the taxpayer mid-level exception, and then they trade 3 future second-round picks to salary dump him. Actively bad to lose those picks. It's bad asset management. I've also heard that Jokic was involved in that decision to want to move off of Reggie Jackson in the end. So maybe there's a pressure to do something. I still think that you probably can't lose 3 second-round picks to get rid of him. The contract didn't work out.
Do you think that I think it was it Charlotte that they sent him to?
Yep.
Do you really think Charlotte would be like, oh, you're only going to give us 1? And they would have been out?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah.
To me, it seems like, why 3?
Yep.
Why do you have to go up that high?
They take another swing with the taxpayer mid-level exception on Dario Saric. Abject failure of a signing.
Crash and burn.
But even on that, when you look at sort of the model use of the mid-level exception last offseason. It's Chris Dunn, who would have helped Denver a ton in the regular season, but notice the degree to which he was an offensive liability still in the playoffs to the extent that he got played off the floor. So I like that. If that's the best version of that guy at $5.4 million or whatever, and he's getting played off the floor in the very first round of the playoffs by a bottom 10 defense in the league in Denver, who are we to say that he would have been able to hang with Denver against better defenses in the first round? I'm not sure that he ends up being a long-term playoff rotation guy for 4 rounds, even if they may sign him instead of Saric, and it's the perfect use of that mechanism. So, Saric, bad signing, but tough spot. They extend Murray
to the max,
and they give him his max instead of trying to sort of hard negotiate on money. But if you go into the season with no extension and he's disgruntled, that only adds layers to sort of the bad vibes in the building, I think. That's part of the thinking on this sort of thing. And by the way, I do think they disgruntled him a little bit by dragging their feet with it. They kind of like...
Too bad. I'm sorry.
No, that's fair. That's fair. They wanted to wait until after the Olympics.
He was coming off abjectly awful playoffs.
Yeah.
And he also has, at this point, a very clear track record of not being ready to play at the start of a season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'd have some reservations about giving somebody all of that money. Don't you think that's reasonable?
Yeah. No, they wanted to wait until after the Olympics. Obviously, you never know what could happen from an injury standpoint, right? They were basically sending him this message that you need to understand the responsibility that comes with this money and go prepare like an all-star and come in and play like an all-star.
From the start.
Like, that was the message that they were sending him.
Yeah.
And they had the intent to give him the max contract the whole time. Like, that was their plan from early in the offseason, from June. But they waited a while. I think that he was a little disgruntled by it. If you remember Media Day, he was pretty terse in his comments about getting the max.
Which is just bizarre to me.
And Josh Kroenke, by the way, has said publicly that he thought guys were playing themselves into shape this season. So,
wonder who he's talking about there.
Is sitting right there. Like, so I'm just gonna, that is worth pointing out. Like, is it Murray's fault? Is it their fault for not negotiating? Like, I think it's fair, like, if you're trying to level a criticism here, to say, why not go into the season without that extension, deal with how uncomfortable it is, and say, hey, there is one team in the NBA that has a ton of cap space right now, and it's the Brooklyn Nets. You want to go get your money for the Brooklyn Nets, or do you want to negotiate with us and have a long career with us that way?
Playing next to an all-timer.
Yeah. So ultimately, they give him the money. I am of the mind, frankly, that he is still worthy of that money as a playoff dog and as a guy who is like.
Did we not just talk about how he's had 2 straight playoffs that have been good but not great?
I think that he is like. I think that you cannot be an all-star and be worth that money. Like, they are ultimately what they are hoping to pay for over the duration of this contract is playoff production. That is the key there. But you'd like to see him start a season a little better.
Maybe once. To me, it's like, if I give you that contract, I would hope that over the course of that contract, at least one season, you're all NBA. Like, is that asking too much? I don't think so. Like, one of those seasons, you're consistently great for an entire season. Right? Now, he hasn't started it. He's about to start it, so he can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be how I would view giving somebody that sort of money, especially with the new CBA. And I think that's going to change. I think what you're going to see is teams are going to start negotiating with players and not just reflexively giving out the max.
Yeah, I think that there's probably some fairness to that. Now, they extend Gordon, and they do get a pretty crucial bit of financial relief from that one with the opt-in that saves them from being, imminently staring the second apron in the face this offseason. Because his salary is going to be $22.8 million
What a deal.
next year, and then it goes up. Then he'll be making in that $30 million range. But
what a deal.
yeah. So, you can knock them over the Murray thing on like not negotiating or whatever, but they cut themselves a pretty good deal on the Aaron Gordon one at least. So there's something to that.
Might have something to do with the two different players.
So you have all of these things. Those are kind of your expensive contracts. Now, asset management is kind of what I think is maybe the defining thing, because a lot of the decisions that I just walked through, there's like justifiable thinking behind a lot of those decisions. And some stuff was circumstance, some stuff was not being aware of what was coming with the CBA. Some stuff was just like Dario Saric, you have to take a stab in the dark at those types of players. But the trading of picks to commit to young guys, and this comes back to Booth Malone. They trade their 25 first for Aaron Gordon. Completely worth it. Like the fact that they don't have a first round pick this year, like frankly,
you do that
who
deal
cares
10
when you have
times out of 10.
Yeah, obviously.
That deal probably won them a championship.
Yeah.
And could have won them multiple had Jamal Murray not tore his ACL.
Mm-hmm. Now, they trade future picks to take Watson and Strother late in the first round of consecutive drafts. Both of those players, I think it's fair to say, have not developed enough so far to justify the loss of those future picks as assets that you can use for other moves, right?
Well, I bet you if and we'll get to this maybe later, if you attached Peyton Watson to a trade, there would be a team that would be interested.
Yeah, probably. But like we haven't talked about his Game 7 yet.
I thought he was pretty good in that series overall.
He had his moments, yeah, but like I don't know, like the lineup stuff did not work with him. Like the results were often bad as kind of a collective.
But I mean, how much of that was him and who he was sharing the court with?
Yeah, that's fair. You're just trying to you're blaming Russ all the way. Is that kind of what you're going with?
I mean, he was pretty bad.
He was pretty bad. Look, Watson was like a minus 30 before garbage time and was 1 for 8 in Game 7. It wasn't a good game.
He had multiple blocks in that series that were, I thought, fantastic.
He had his moments,
He hit some open threes. He wasn't great, but I thought he was decent.
Yeah. So I think what it was, I think that they traded their 29 first
for Strother?
For a combination of the Strother, Pickett, and Tyson picks, basically. They traded the 29 first and the 40th pick in that draft to move up and end up with 29, 32, and 37. And you get Strother, Pickett, Tyson. Strother, Game 6 maybe gives you a little bit of, optimism going forward, but generally they have wanted to see more from him.
He's trick or treat.
2 years in. Pickett, another casualty of the Malone Booth stuff.
They were playing Colin Gillespie over him last year.
Hard to say exactly, but like his, development has not been where it needs to be as a result of the toxicity that was going on.
And it should be noted, looked good by the end of the regular season this year.
He did look good by the end of the regular season. So, like, look, could he be the future backup point guard for Jamal Murray and just be like that guy in the rotation? Then maybe this ends up being worth it, what I'm talking about right now. Hunter Tyson, I'm not so sure. That one's not looking great. And then they give guaranteed contracts to all of these guys, which takes away roster spots and takes away the ability to go add veteran-type players. So I'm pretty sure it was a 27 first, by the way, that went into getting Peyton Watson. So they've lost 27, 29 first-round picks, which means that you're not able to trade 28 or 30 either, to get further young guys for the development plan in the immediate term. You can say the jury's out, or you can say it was just actively bad. That's up, eye of the beholder, I guess. But then last year, they trade 3 second-round picks to move up for Deron Holmes, who immediately tears his Achilles, which is no one's fault, and the jury's out on that one objectively, I think. But once again, they are mortgaging future picks because of Calvin Booth's confidence in his scouting eye in the short term, that he can use late first-round picks and early second-round picks to build a successful rotation. And that rubs Malone the wrong way. Those players are at a disadvantage in Malone's, sort of hierarchy internally as a result. And you just have this broiling issue that is rubbing off on the ability to see whether or not these players are going to kind of follow through on what Denver desperately needs them to follow through on. And so all of this amounts to them having no second-round picks to trade, no picks in the upcoming draft, and basically the ability to trade one future first, which is going to be either their 31 or 32
and a cap sheet with very little flexibility and high dollar guys that might be a little overpaid.
Yeah.
I mean, Aaron Gordon definitely not overpaid, but
no, of course not.
And Nikola Jokic, it's impossible to overpay him.
So ultimately, what you have here, what this might come back to is that Calvin Booth says after the championship that he wants to be the Spurs and that they can be a dynasty over more of an 8-year, 9-year, whatever sort of period. What we're watching happen in the NBA in real time is dynasties are really freaking hard right now, and we are in an area of complete parity. There are 4 teams left, and we can already say with absolute certainty that there's going to be a 7th different champion in 7 years for the first time ever.
I thought it was 8th. Am I wrong on that?
No, it's 7.
7, okay.
Because the Warriors won in 18 and then 22.
Yeah.
So that is crazy. I think that
this is unprecedented, by the way.
It is completely unprecedented. And to an extent, a lot of teams didn't see this coming, not just the Nuggets. But I think it speaks to the fact that executives probably need to stop talking and thinking like they can build a dynasty right now just because they have a really good player. That's not the era we're in. You do what you can to win one, and then you try to win the next one. I kind of think that's where we're at. And the theme of those...
Hold on. Let me interrupt you.
Okay.
I think the way Oklahoma City has built its roster, its cap sheet, and its asset of picks is probably as close as you're going to see to a team that could potentially pull that off.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But a lot of the decisions that they're making, they've been putting off for years into an era where awareness is more established about the new CBA. So they're now in a spot where they can function comfortably within the bounds of the rules, and they know what those rules are, and they understand those rules. And that gives them a pretty massive advantage. And part of it is just timing, frankly.
Yeah.
And the timing was not on Denver's side, and maybe you can say they should have had some more anticipation, I guess, of what was to come. I don't know. But the theme of those comments by Booth and the future pick-related moves by Booth was an extreme self-confidence that I think you could, if you're being critical, you can call hubris, which dominoes into sort of a petty response by Malone in terms of roster management, and it leads to wasted time, wasted assets. And you have them using 6 future second-round picks just in the last offseason to get rid of Reggie Jackson and to move up for Holmes. So those 6 picks go towards 0 minutes played in the 24-25 season. And now here they are, where it's you have this this situation where they have steadily gotten less deep, and the only way to get meaningfully deeper is to trade a starter, except that the ideal starters to trade are going to be difficult to trade because of a combination of their contracts and the lack of future picks to attach to sweeten deals.
And I'd add another part to that, what they mean to the team, in the sense so, and we have Aaron has so gracefully put together a bunch of different MPJ trades in the trade machine that we can go over. But,
he's just been cooking over here in silence.
Before we get to that, the thing that needs to be said, he's their best shooter.
Porter?
Yeah, no. And you trade away Porter, a team that's not a great shooting team.
No, you're totally right.
Is now down its best shooter. So it's a really impossible scenario, and it's why when you think about it, if you're like just cold-hearted and trying to do the smartest possible thing for your future, the thing that might make the most sense, trade Aaron Gordon.
It's a fair point.
Get a bunch of stuff.
I think he turns 30 in September. It would be a sell high sort of move. It would be a cold-hearted move,
extremely,
to say the least.
I don't think anybody wants to see it happen. But the thing is,
it would devastate this fan base.
That's how you replenish probably pick assets and depth.
Yep.
Right?
Now,
a lot of teams would like a guy like Aaron Gordon.
I'm going to say this on the Gordon thing. Porter's shooting is a vital attribute on a team that just doesn't have enough shooting. And by the way, it's contested shot making that he can do at his size, not just open shooting. Gordon, that sort of switchable wing defense, you can put him on centers a little bit, you can put him on
invaluable
smalls. That's something that they don't have a lot of either.
Right.
And they were just in the 20s in defensive rating this year.
I'm talking about just the return.
I know. And by the way, also Aaron Gordon shot 45% from three this year.
He was,
and just had the best.
And that's what I mean by return. I mean,
it's like, it is brutal.
Just think of all the teams that would put their hands up as soon as you say Aaron Gordon is available.
I know. He can create for himself a little more than Porter. It's not always pretty, but the bully ball stuff, like he can post up. He can play from the elbow.
He's a good passer.
He's a good passer. We even saw him hit like a step back off the dribble three at one point in the OKC series. Correct. I'm not sure he has a ton of that in him, but like
he was doing that against. You remember the Warriors game where they had nobody?
Yeah,
he was doing that in that game too.
Yeah. Like that little first option that's kind of still tucked into a corner of his brain is still capable of coming out. And like Porter's a guy who other guys create his shots for him a lot more than him creating for himself, and he got a little better at it this year as a driver, but he doesn't have a handle. I think he's kind of plateaued in terms of ball handling.
Doesn't have a post-up game. Which is kind of for his size.
He doesn't always play as big as he is, and that is, a consistent counterpoint to the positional size argument with him. But, it's funny, like all these things that we're pointing out as flaws in his game and attributes that are extremely useful in Aaron Gordon's game are exactly the reason why it would be harder to trade Porter and easier to trade Gordon this summer. So, especially when you factor in their salaries next season.
I was thinking about it, and I was like, if you traded Aaron Gordon and said you have to take Zeke, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're up to about, what, 35, 40 million in salary?
That would be about, it would be, those two combined would be about 31 for next year.
So 31 in salary, which means you can probably get back maybe two players and maybe some picks and some stuff. Mm-hmm. And, one of those is a rotation piece, but one isn't, very much isn't. I don't know. Just to be clear, I wouldn't trade Aaron Gordon. I think Aaron Gordon's a fantastic player, and I think he's on a great contract, and you need guys like that.
But when you're backed into this type of corner, you have to think about these things.
Exactly.
Like
they just have so few avenues to improve their team. So, all right. Aaron, you got the trade machine going on over there. Everybody wants to trade Michael Porter Jr. Do you got something that makes sense for us?
I don't know if any of it makes sense. I just put stuff through until it gave me the green light that said, yeah, you can get rid of him.
Okay.
This all started when Bennett and I
God.
were walking back from the arena, and we're talking about...
Oh, this has been days of trade machine work.
Well, we talked about a lot of stuff. It wasn't just directed at
Sure.
Mr. Porter Jr.
Sure.
MPJ in exchange for DeMar DeRozan and big science, Jonas Valanciunas.
Why does Sacramento do that?
Yeah, why does Sacramento want that?
They're not going to win anything anytime soon. A lot of these teams that were put on here were just because teams aren't.
I mean, that would be
potentially
awesome
competing.
for Denver because it basically gets you back a starting small forward who can do a little bit more than
But can't
Porter
shoot
by
threes.
yeah, but you can create at least. That's
Yeah.
helpful. And a backup center.
Yes.
So like it fills two needs. I'm not entirely sure what it fills for Sacramento.
They sell a few number 1 jerseys. You've
Okay.
been around Denver.
Stauskas?
MPJ's
Stauskas?
popular.
Stauskas. Michael Malone was in the room for that.
For
by the way.
Stauskas?
Yeah,
Was he? Oh.
Yeah, because he would. I think he had just been hired as their head coach,
Oh,
and
wow.
so that famous video, he's like sitting at the table, just.
All right. What else you got? I don't think that one's happening.
Yeah, and from the 2 spot, I want to let Bennett cook because this came straight from him.
Oh no! This is
This is
if
his
you're
bi-
about,
his
this is
big
probably
theory.
me just throwing out some stupid crap here. But
It was him
let's hear
throwing
it.
out some stupid crap and talking about it at length for the entirety of a 2-mile walk.
I'm
Let's
ready.
hear it.
I'm ready for it.
MPJ for Zion.
I don't know that New Orleans does that. By the
Of
way.
course they don't.
Yeah.
Why would you?
I don't. I think that I was talking about like
Okay, first of all, they would get much more than Michael Porter Jr. if they decided to trade Zion, even with his health issues.
that's why I'm saying like that might have to get into like their contracts are comparable, but like that's more of a Jamal thing. And also if there's any fear at all that Jamal Murray isn't taking his conditioning seriously enough, then you're just going to trade Zion for the same problem, like in an older player,
Right.
Like
Yes.
so I
Yeah.
don't know. I was having some fun with that because I was like I'm a Zion believer still. I do believe in the talent. I don't want to give up on him yet.
Can he rebound for me?
Bennett said he would rebound if he came to Denver.
Oh, would he?
I questioned that too.
He
and
suddenly starts
He
rebounding?
said he will rebound. Tell him about his per 36 also. You liked that one.
The top per 36 minutes scores, I mean, obviously per minute, per 48 minutes, per whatever minutes scores in the NBA this season were Shea, Giannis, Zion, and Jokic.
That's not surprising at all.
I know.
One of them played
And
like
he did it on
13
six
games.
No, he played 30, but yes, your point is correct. And by the way, Zion did it on 60% true shooting, so it was efficient.
No,
Yes,
I mean,
no, they're not like just because their contracts are comparable does not mean that New Orleans would ever do that. But yeah, that obviously they have a Zion problem. So like,
that would be one of the dumbest trades in the history of New Orleans basketball.
Yeah.
And let me just say, they've had a lot of dumb trades going back to the Jazz days. Gail Goodrich, they traded for an old Gail.
Aaron's just trying to make me look stupid right now. I did, and at no point was I like, yeah, this is a trade that could realistically happen.
All right, let's get another one.
He was on NBA.com customizing those roster or those jerseys you can do
Yeah.
for yourself, and he had a Zion Denver one already made up.
Okay, next trade.
MPJ straight up for Brandon Ingram.
Ooh. Can he even be traded right now? Because then they just extend him.
That's a good question. Like I said, I went through the trade machine. If it gave the green light, I just put it on the
Okay.
list. There was some questionable stuff in there.
I kind of feel like you're
Did
almost
Toronto
getting
do him?
another MPJ in a way, like frustratingly talented.
But he can dribble.
That's
you know,
true. He
like,
can
that's-
create.
Yeah,
But he also kind of like that's all he wants to do. He's not really put him in a system and he's going to operate within the system guy. He wants to cook.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. But I mean, like, I mean, if you're Denver, I think you do it. But
Do you?
I don't know.
Because his contract is about to start.
I mean,
I'm pretty sure.
Toronto just traded for him, like clearly saying we want to build around him. So I don't think that Toronto's in
Well,
a
do they
spot where
wanna
they want to trade him.
Build around him, or is he just part of their nucleus? Because I feel
Yes,
like
that's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's him and Scotty Barnes are
right,
there.
they're building around Scotty Barnes.
Yeah.
MPJ, R.J. Barrett, and Grady Dick.
Why do they do that? Why does Toronto do that?
I don't know why Toronto does that either.
Grady Dick on his own might be more valuable as a trade asset than
I'd like Grady
Porter.
Dick.
This list is a testament to how difficult it's going to be to move him for a lot.
Yes.
In return.
Yeah, that's and also I believe a native Toronto son, R.J. Barrett.
Correct. Yeah,
So
that's true.
Also tough to deal.
None of these are going to work. MPJ for Bam.
No, there's no.
How
way.
delusional are you about Michael Porter Jr.'s talent?
I'm just saying that the trade machine, the numbers matched up.
I mean,
And there's an impossibility because if you look at him on the list where he sits and how much he makes,
You got to
his
get
name
down in
doesn't
the
quite-
mud more,
listen.
man. Like,
if Pat Riley was throwing that's one of those where you're like, okay, let's just talk about this in secret. Like, you're the Dallas Mavericks general manager, and I'm the Lakers general manager, and we act like it's no big deal, but you're like silently high-fiving somebody under the table the whole time. Not happening.
And when you say get in the mud, I'm not adding 4 teams into this and trying to figure
no,
out a
no,
way
that's
to
when
no,
you get
I
fun.
mean, I mean, like, find a bad team, find guys who we don't necessarily think of as great players, and who might not be useful in the long term to those teams, but might be able to find something else in Denver.
you've really got to
Look
dig.
at Portland. Look
Charlotte,
at Washington.
Charlotte,
Like, yeah.
Atlanta. There's go to the Eastern Conference and just start fumbling through their rosters.
Like, is there a way you can get like Robert Williams combined with someone else in Portland for Porter, like that sort of thing?
Would they trade in division though too?
Yeah, maybe not.
I don't know if they'd want. I mean, they have done it before. They did it with Nurkic back in the day.
Yeah.
So I guess, but like, I don't know. The other stuff would. I don't know. I
like
it's-
Chicago.
Yeah,
like,
Chicago or something like that. Yes.
Yeah.
You go to the dumb teams.
I went through some of the dumb teams.
Is there anything with the Warriors? Like,
You want Kuminga?
just like I don't know. They need more. Like, they could actually use Porter.
Yes. But what are you getting?
I mean, yeah, it's like like they're trying to get rid of Kuminga probably. So like,
Kuminga.
but I don't know. I'm just like, they have a bunch of guys who just kind of aren't that good.
I don't
and they
love their
kinda-
roster either. I'm not.
So it's like, is there any
Podzemski.
package
You want
that
some
can-
Podzemski?
Could you give them Porter in that first for 2 role players who could come in and be decent? Like, I don't know.
I've got another Bennett one
Okay.
that he dreamt up.
Throw it at me.
MPJ for Clay, PJ Washington.
Nope, that is not
And I threw
anything
in
that I
Max
said.
Christie.
No.
You said
I was
Clay.
I was suggesting, you were just putting words in my mouth. What I was suggesting was a Boston Dallas trade of Klay Thompson and PJ Washington for Drew Holiday.
Well, what if we did a 3-way there, and then somehow get some sort of Boston assets that because they're going to have to fire sale here in a second.
Bennett did mention that they might have to fire sale based on
Boston's
next year's potential.
Boston's going to have to trade someone. There's 0% chance they don't trade someone.
And so, but the only way that Denver makes something work with them is they get a third partner in there that sends picks or something over to Boston, right? Like that's kind of the only way it's going to work.
Are you trying to get MPJ to Boston here?
I'm trying to
We're
get.
trying to get MPJ to Dallas.
Well, I think it's,
Aaron is just like
you're finding a
making
third
crap up.
You're
right
just finding
now.
a third trade partner where you can involve this other partner where the salaries can move and match, and you're getting back maybe a Boston asset or two. You're like, hey, would you be interested in trading Peyton Pritchard, or would you be interested in bringing back our favorite son?
Tell me why Boston or Dallas would take Michael Porter Jr. Boston's entire goal right now is to downsize on its finances and get back into a spot where they are not competitively compromised for the long term.
Yeah, they're not getting Michael Porter
Getting
Jr.
a guy who is $38 million next year and then another year on his contract after that is the opposite of what they're trying to
You're
accomplish.
misunderstanding. They're not getting Michael Porter Jr. It's the third team that gets Michael Porter
So
Jr.
Dallas, in Aaron's suggestion.
Sure.
Michael Porter Jr., a real defense wins championships guy for Nico Harrison.
The Lakers do dumb stuff. Maybe they can involve the Lakers.
I'm just like, Aaron's just like, he's putting words in my mouth. What I was suggesting was like 2 smaller contracts, like PJ Washington and Klay Thompson, like go see what they can do to deepen the rotation, spread out your cap sheet a little bit for Boston. And Drew Holiday is like the perfect Nico Harrison guy for that window and for the skill set that he kind of wants his guys to have.
By
and
the
they
way,
need more backcourt guys.
we
That's the trade I was suggesting, and it had nothing to do with Denver.
Just want to add, we haven't talked about this yet. Dallas winning the NBA lottery.
Yeah, crazy.
Unbelievable.
Crazy.
What Nico Harrison has got to be the luckiest man there is.
The West is going to be so good for the next, like, it is outrageous how good the West is.
Well, luckily they're going to bring in two teams into the league, and they're both going to be West teams, and one of the Western teams is going to have to move over to the East. And I can't remember what podcast it was that I heard this on. I think the idea is it's going to be Minnesota.
I thought the idea was either Minnesota or Memphis, or maybe to a lesser extent New Orleans could.
I think it's Minnesota because they have
Wow.
those teams right next. Like they're the only one where they're kind of like this outpost out by themselves.
I guess so. It's kind of a bummer to me. I know. The rivalry's fun. Like I don't with Denver.
But
you don't want to.
They make more sense as rivals with the Bucks and the Bulls, and that regional sort of thing. And
It makes more geographic sense. It doesn't make emotional sense as much. The Wolves and Nuggets,
Well, you're going to
it's
have
an incestuous relationship.
You're going to have the Sonics back, and you can rekindle those Sonics Nuggets glory days.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Vegas, I guess, could end up being a rival of the Nuggets.
I'm rooting for Memphis to go over. That would be my personal preference, but
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I hate to break it to you.
yeah.
Do you have any other trades for us?
He's probably going to say that I came up with some other Michael Porter for Cooper Flagg, matter of fact.
I mean, you lost all your validity when you mentioned Zion for him. And then you went on a 30-minute tirade about it.
Here's what happened.
I've
we
never
were
seen
eating
Bennett
dinner
so heated.
in Oklahoma City. And we were just looking through a page of salaries in the NBA. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Zion's salary is right by Porter's salary. Porter for Zion. And now it is being treated as a serious podcast topic.
This conversation was like something out of a Christopher Nolan movie. We started talking, and then all of a sudden we were in another spot still talking about it, and then in the next scene we were in another spot still talking about it. It just extended
and that
over
was
8 different
that
locations.
Was the Denver Post podcast studio.
Do you have any others for us?
Yeah, MPJ for Jeremy Grant and Shaden Sharp. Little depth building.
It's something like that. I'm still not sure Portland says yes, but
He is a Pac Northwest guy.
yeah. Yeah. Something like that. Like that's how you try to get something productive out of him.
I tell you, the more I think about it, the more I think they aren't going to be able to do any of that stuff.
It's really difficult. He just averaged, I think, 7.4 points in a playoff series.
He had one arm.
Yes. But it doesn't help his trade value.
No.
is the issue.
He had one arm.
He also played very poorly in the Timberwolves series last year while fully healthy. And I think
Correct.
that is on people's mind. If you go, look, the last 4 Nuggets postseasons, he has been either unhealthy or just bad. And in the decisive moments, like this series, unhealthy causes him to not play well. He has an excuse, but nonetheless. Last year, just did not play well against the Timberwolves. Year before that, they win the championship. Good job. Year before that, he's out. Doesn't play. They're a first round out. That's their last 4 playoffs, and they haven't gotten like
No, it's a tough sell.
19 point per game Michael Porter Jr.
It's a real tough sell.
consistently out of those playoff runs.
It's why when you go back to it, you think, well, Aaron Gordon's the guy that's going to get you the roster sort of redo that you need to do. I'll put the question to you here. Do they absolutely need to do that? can they still be a contender, keep these guys together, and add somehow around the fringe?
It's just tough. There is a realistic world where that's what they decide to do. I think it starts to look worse if you continue to stagnate and not get any better by sitting here and being happy with the same thing over and over again.
But you have to find somebody else to agree to the trade.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. No, it's fair. They just if that's the case, they have to find a way to get off some other contracts and find depth that way, because their only two free agents are Vlatko and DeAndre Jordan. Vlatko, I didn't get a chance to talk to him after Game 7, but as long as Jokic wants him around, I don't foresee him walking away in free agency. So DeAndre Jordan told me that he would like to be back. Retirement is on the table for him. He has to talk with his family. He's got a young, I think a 9-year-old, 10-year-old. So he's not totally sure, but he as a competitor, as an athlete, he would like to come back and play another year, I think. And frankly, I think the Nuggets would have him back because he's like pretty invaluable intangibly, and then is a serviceable regular season backup center, if not a playoff one. And it's fine to have a guy like that on a minimum contract, but then you have to find a way to get off of some of the other ones.
Yeah,
if
Dario
they're both
Saric,
back.
you have to find a way to turn Dario Saric into something.
Yeah,
and or Zeke Naji. Do they want Russell Westbrook to opt in to his second year?
I think that my hunch is that he will opt in. I think that there is a complex relationship to Russell Westbrook where the organization feels loyal to him, and also I don't think they would be devastated if it was over. And if they could shake hands and say, thank you, you were very good for us, and now it's time to go our separate ways. It's
off to Utah again.
I mean, it's tough, though. Like, the problem there, even though he outplayed his salary last season,
easily,
is that there are not a lot of other NBA teams, if any, that want him, I'm pretty sure. I think that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason Denver's able to get him on a minimum, right? So if that's the case, and he is sort of a negative asset in spite of having been really effective for Denver for the most part, then how are you getting off of his contract if he opts in? Like, are you attaching?
You can't attach anything.
You can't attach your first to get off of Russell Westbrook. That would be terrible asset management.
And that's it would have to be a future one, and you just don't want to send that away.
Yeah. Do you try to trade another player, another young player, to get picks back, and then use those picks to help get off of a Westbrook and or a Saric, and then have the roster spots open via those two trades? Do you try to use a pick swap to free yourself up on the Saric or the Westbrook roster spot? I don't know. It is very difficult. It's a real pickle that they're in.
Yeah, and we haven't even got to the part of this that might even matter most. Who's their GM going to be?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's hard to.
And once you know who the GM is, you start to understand maybe this is how this guy is going to approach the job, but we just don't know who that is, and we don't know what that approach is going to be. And they're going to have to figure that out soon, right? I would think in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Drafts coming up now. Granted, they don't have picks, but maybe the next guy is going to want to trade in somehow.
Yep.
Like that.
No, you they've worked on a draft plan and stuff, like the front office as it's currently assembled, but you have to have someone in place who has a philosophy and has a plan for the offseason and just sort of an operating procedure, for crying out loud, right? Like you just have to have those things early enough in what could be such a pivotal offseason.
What are the odds that the two interim guys are the full-time guys for head coach and GM when we talk a month from now?
Decent. Pretty decent.
So does that indicate that they thought that the only real culture change they needed to do was get these two civil warriors out of the building?
That is 100% what it would indicate. Yep. Whether that's enough for, the fans will be interesting. Because I think the optics are a little weird if you go internal on both. But they also are very sensitive to the fact right now that they need a coach and general manager who are going to get along and are going to be aligned on how to build the roster and how to deploy it.
Right. And do you, hiring the coach before the general manager, you sort of risk that not being the case?
Yeah, it makes it a little trickier, I think, for sure. Now, look, if the bare bones tale as old as time with this stuff is that the general manager wants the coach to play more guys and see what they have in certain guys, whether it's young players or whatever, it's worth mentioning then that Adelman was pretty flexible, or at least attempted to be flexible during this playoff run. He used almost every body at, that was available to him and tried to see if he could get something out of Zeke Naji in rotation minutes, tried to see what he could get out of Pickett, out of Vlatko Čančar even, DeAndre Jordan, like Strother in the second round. Like, he exhausted his options going down the bench to see all right, can I steal 4 minutes here? And if these 4 minutes are good enough, can this guy be the eighth man in the next game and give me 10 minutes? And that, he tried to do that, and that's probably encouraging from the standpoint of any general manager. I think a lot of fans wanted to point out, and there's no way to know if it's true, but would Michael Malone have been playing Julian Strother in Game 6 elimination game in the rotation when he had that little explosion that helped them win the game? Don't know. So in theory, I think Adelman is kind of the right person who can manage with any GM. But yeah, there's always a risk factor there. And so I think they're sensitive to that. There's a cost thing at play here. Whether they like it or not, the Kroenkes have a reputation for being cheap on
That's why Tim Connelly's not
executives. It is a resounding reputation and it's the kind of thing where that will be talked about. If they are hiring both Adelman and Tenzer, it's going to come across as the cheap option, and it's also going to come across as Josh Kroenke saying that he feels comfortable being a little more involved in basketball ops and being pretty, tight-knit on some of those discussions, which you can say is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
He's no Matt Ishbia. I'll say that.
No, of course not. Gosh, yeah, no. I would not level that accusation. Look, it's interesting. What their perception of this is, I don't know that they feel like a ton needs to change now that they've gotten rid of Malone and Booth. And you can agree with that or disagree with that, but Josh Kroenke told me straight up in the locker room that this is the proudest he's been, other than the championship team, of sort of a run that a group has had and the resilience that they showed and how they sort of came together, that sort of thing. So, you could read into that maybe and say that he would prefer to keep this five together, even at the expense of depth. It's just going to look worse if he does that, and a year from now, they're in the same spot where they're getting killed by a deeper team in the second round again.
Yeah. Yeah, they're in such a weird spot.
Yeah.
It's a really weird spot, and extricating themselves from it would lead to some really uncomfortable decisions if they were to make drastic moves.
There's also the Murray trade option. That's the other thing.
Which again, like, are there a lot of teams that want to pay Jamal Murray $52 million a year?
Maybe not, but I also tend to think that one of the most difficult, tough shot makers in the league.
Yep.
A guy with a great handle, great finishing ability around the basket.
Yep.
A really good passing point guard. And whatever you want to say about this year, a proven playoff dog.
And last year.
My hunch is that a team could talk themselves into that.
I think so too.
Like,
I also think sending Jamal Murray away sort of takes away part of what made the Nuggets really special.
Yeah,
not that Jokic couldn't have that chemistry with another player. I think he could, but they have that, and they have years of it.
And it's harder to argue trading Murray for depth because you need his ball handling. Like, you need another ball in hand player like him. So it's almost like is the more reasonable argument with him in terms of trade to try and just get someone who you think can be a better second option. Do you give Phoenix a call about Durant and say Murray and Peyton Watson and a first or something? Like,
why would you bring in an aging vet? Like, that just
because
seems...
he has 1 year left on his contract, and you get 1 year of a guy who's still one of the best isolation scorers in the NBA, can drive offense without needing Jokic for a little while, and then whether it goes well or not is off the books next summer, giving you some actual flexibility to work with in terms of the cap. That's the case for it. He's Kevin Durant. He's a top, 10 to 15 player of all time.
If there's any player that would love playing with Nikola Jokic more than him, I'd be surprised. I think he would love playing with Nikola Jokic. I just don't know that I would. I mean, he's too old, and that really went poorly in Phoenix. Now, that's not all on him, but he was part of it. They didn't even make the playoffs. So, all right, we got to wrap up here. But before we do, we have at least one review on iTunes that we've got to read. So I'm pretty sure we have some emails too. Don't know if we're going to be able to get to that. Just so you remember, email the show at mschubert@denverpost.com. We'll have much more time to get, now that the season's over, for all intents and purposes. We'll have more opportunities to get to those questions. But as it is today, we've got to run. So iTunes, 5 stars, lie with your stars, tell the truth with your review. Now, let's get to our review here. Title: Top tier Nuggets content. 5 stars. From Bennett's mom. Great content, great insight, lots of fun to listen to. Kind of wish this was on video so you could also share Aaron's terrific photos. Cannot believe that Matt almost made Bennett miss his flight to Sacramento after the firings, though. Bennett's mom just wants to get a look at her little baby's face.
Thanks for the review.
Do you think that's actually your mom?
Yes.
That's great. I don't know if any of my family members listen to this podcast.
I guess it's possible that it's an imposter, but,
Likely your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron, does your mom listen to this podcast?
No.
Do any of your family members listen to this podcast?
I doubt it.
Yeah, none. Me too.
Not your brother?
He lives in the valley. He's a Suns guy, apparently.
Yeah, but, maybe he has thoughts on Durant for Murray.
I doubt it.
One of my brothers has listened to this podcast once. I know that because he commented on it. Happened one time.
I love that.
So, there you go.
By the way, real quick, Was Michael Malone taking shots or not at Denver?
I mean, it kind of, maybe a little bit. I mean, he didn't have the full-throated Nikola Jokic MVP defense that he had when he was the coach of Nikola Jokic, before Nikola Jokic may or may not have said, yeah, it's fine if you fire him.
It would be unprofessional of him to be like, yeah, Shea doesn't deserve to be the MVP, though.
Well, if that's what he thinks, then he can. That's not unprofessional. If he actually thinks that Nikola Jokic is the better player and deserves the MVP.
All right.
No?
Fair enough. No,
And what about the best fans in the NBA?
I don't know. Yeah, the best fans. That was an interesting one. That was an interesting one.
That's not exactly drunk Malone at the parade.
It was an interesting comment.
How about that hair? Do you like the hair?
Yeah, it looked good. I loved the suit. It was a great suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The fam one is tough, but like he gave David Adelman props for using his zone against OKC. He's both a guy who usually knows what he's doing when a microphone is in front of him.
Almost always.
But also a guy who might have just been speaking to the understood consensus at this point that Shea is going to win the MVP and that it is an object of fact rather than an object of opinion at this point, that he is just going to win. That's kind of what I interpreted it as. But you never know. I mean, the guy, he bought a full-page ad in the Denver Post.
Love him
too. So
we're fans here.
So like it's not like the full page ad was not like a middle finger emoji,
no.
At Denver.
It's nothing but love.
Yeah.
Nothing but love for the fan base and for the city. So you're saying OKC wins in 5 in this series and likely in the finals as well.
It's kind of my hunch. I personally would love a Wolves-Pacers finals.
I want Wolves-Knicks.
Just the trade storyline?
The trade storyline. I just think that would be one of the Nova boys going against the other Nova boys. The trade. I just love the idea of Madison Square Garden being involved in an NBA Finals. I think that's fun. Ron, do you have any preferences?
I'm just excited for Eastern Conference basketball to be back.
You think it's back?
I don't know. We grew up in the 90s.
It was good then.
We loved watching these type of matchups.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the same players, obviously, but the cultures are there. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, Indianapolis and the Knicks going up against each other. That is great 90s throwback.
Probably because I was a kid coming of age and everything, but that was peak basketball for me. I just loved it.
Oh, yeah, 90s basketball was tough to beat. It was really tough to beat. Not in the skill sense.
No, 82-85 wasn't much of a contest, but it was just fun. It was good theater.
Yes, yeah.
Kind of funny how we, by the way, just like spent months as a collective media, like previewing a Cavs-Celtics series, only for neither of them to be there. Just the
Celtics. What a way for that series, for that season to end. Where I mean, they're in the position that the Nuggets were 4 years ago, where Jamal Murray gets injured, and now they have a purgatory season where what do they do? The
problem is that Boston might be too good to be in purgatory, and the East might be too bad.
Yes.
Like I don't know how easy it's going to be to tank in that.
The Nuggets had that problem too. I mean, they still had Nikola Jokic. They were going to be a 48-win team no matter what.
Yep.
It should be noted, I did look up our wins totals.
Thank you for doing this.
And last place, Ron. Sorry.
I'm shocked.
I earned that. I took a swing on Philadelphia. I took a swing on New Orleans. What are you going to do?
Yeah, those were big whiffs, for sure.
Took a lot of swings.
I thought our guy Joel would maybe get healthy at some point.
You were below the Mendoza line with the batting average.
I thought Paul George might play somewhat up to his contract.
Not even close.
I thought Zion would come back just chiseled and in shape, but maybe when he's in Denver.
Second place, yours truly. Bennett, 4 wins better than me, and entirely because of the Cavaliers.
Yeah, that's a narrow escape.
Yeah.
I think I had like an 11-win lead with a few weeks left, so
Yeah,
you closed the gap. It was respectable.
the big swing was Cavaliers for you, Suns for me.
What does it say about us as ball knowers that the third pick in the draft was the person who won?
Well, I mean, the third pick's kind of advantageous. You get 3 and 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's not a bad place to be. I mean, what does it say about me that I had the first pick and I picked OKC and you totally poo-pooed that pick and it ended up being extremely right?
It's a fair point. Still not enough to beat me, so.
Yeah. Well, all right. I forget, what was our bet with that? Is there something that has to happen
It was
now?
some sort of buying something for a podcast episode related. It might have been last place has to bring in something.
Yeah.
I'm not bringing in anything.
Aaron, you're on the hook.
I'm a poverty franchise. I can't afford to.
I'll go back and check the tape.
Yeah, we'll go back. We'll look. We'll see what it was.
We could do that. I could shave my head, for example. Just-
Yeah, me too. We'll both shave our heads.
yeah, let's do that
Yeah.
and then call it even.
Yeah, fair enough.
We'll go see what you have to bring in.
Yeah.
Mr. Getty Images.
Yeah, you got that fat Getty money.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I'll go to ESPN.com or The Athletic or something like that, and if they have something on the Nuggets, at least half the time it's an Aaron Ontiveros shot.
Well, let's hope so.
At least half the time, if not more.
Yeah, and if anyone at Adidas, New Balance, Nike's listening, use them.
All right. Well, I think that's it for us. Bennett, now you have a coaching search and a GM search to pay attention to. Aaron, all sorts of free time for you on tap.
No, I was at state soccer till 1:30 a.m. last night.
That's true. Anything you're looking forward to this summer, you guys?
Just some travel.
Where are you going?
Getting back to a normal sleep schedule. Mostly camping places.
In Colorado? You going anywhere?
Yeah, I want to go to... There's some other areas around like Leadville and that kind of area.
Oh yeah, that's
camping.
good spots.
Yeah,
Those are good spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mount Massive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all
Check
great.
it out.
Yeah. Okay, well, that'll wrap it for us. We'll be back here again, I don't know, next week? Yeah, something like that.
Sometime soon.
Yeah, I after they announce the coach and GM or something like that. MVP, whatever. Until then.
Looks like we have another dragon, Master Ace, spitting the burning passion. It's about to be a catastrophe. Thought I was the only survivor, but at last we meet. Like the food vegans don't eat. I know you can see the infernal blaze. We would probably burn the stage and leave it with third degrees. And inside of us is an eternal blaze, blazing eternally like a furnace. But it's so hot it's burning the furnace's frame. Your family and furniture isn't safe. Better evacuate, cause the skill we can calibrate reduces the chances of your survival if you ever try to retaliate. So dance to this recital so you can slowly gravitate towards us. Who needs a chorus when you're hotter than Earth's core is? No strings attached with no puppets, yo, we're cordless. I fly even when I'm hurt, yo, that's soaring. Your skill isn't apparent, it's an orphan. We proceed to spit the verse that takes your spirit and lifts it high into the earth's atmospheres. Don't come at my sphere of influence, you squares. I take a spear and put it through you, I raise the stakes. Ha, medium rare, you're the least of the media's fears. Why he's the reason the media's scared. Please be prepared to be impaired. Go see repairs, defeating people in pairs. Jordans, I thought I needed pairs to be compared to the people in pairs.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Gather round hip hoppers as if you're still living. Still got love for the game, I'm still giving and still driven. Like Diddy in the Maybach. I've been reppin' for the city since way back. All y'all rappers better stay back, cause you still can't find me, I'm a needle in a haystack. A rare breed, sitting high up in the chariot. What y'all do is getting high up in the Marriott. Well, consider this your wake-up call. If you're married to the game, it's the break-up call. And you ain't wearing a crown if you're not tearing it down. You clowns get found right there in the ground. 6 feet, dirt nap, that's because your shit's weak. I'm a giant, you a pipsqueak. Welcome to my kingdom, yup, the throne has an occupant. Read my name at the bottom of the document. Check the scroll, I'm giving good times like Esther Roll. Peace to Keith E, God bless the soul. Trying to get more checks to hold. On some slick Rick, Mr. T shit, big chest of gold. And the flow still extra cold, like the North Pole, cocaine snow, another lost soul. Bow down, it's the Grand Royal, yup. 20 plus years in the game, and still the fans loyal.